Hey guys, tonight we begin with something special. This is a journey into a quieter corner of the past, where stories are not loud with battles or victories, but soft with the small rituals that came before an ending. Before we step into tonight's story, take a moment to like this video and subscribe, so that these forgotten mysteries can drift a little farther, maybe even reaching others in your family who need a gentle way to fall asleep. And in the comments, tell me your location and the exact time you're watching this. It's always fascinating to see those tiny lights glowing on a map across the world, each one of you listening quietly, together, though apart. The morning begins not with the crack of dawn, but with a soft haze rising over the Midwest, a thin veil of mist that clings to the ground and curls around the edges of fences and telegraph poles. The train waits at the platform like some restless beast of iron, its metal body gleaming faintly under the pale light, its chimney breathing out a low sigh of steam. The world is quiet, except for the shuffle of boots and the murmurs of passengers, each carrying with them the weight of anticipation, each bound for the same destination whispered about in towns and cities across the nation. The White City of Chicago, the grand world's Columbian Exposition of 1893. There is something peculiar about train stations in the morning. They feel both temporary and eternal, places where strangers gather for a moment and vanish into the day. Wooden benches creak beneath tired bodies, porters move about with brisk efficiency, and the faint smell of coal lingers in the air. At this hour, voices are hushed, conversations clipped, as though everyone is saving their energy for the long day ahead. A boy sells newspapers at the corner of the platform, his stack already thinned by curious travellers, eager to scan headlines about the fair's newest marvels. The train's bell tolls once, then again, and with a deep groan the carriages begin to shudder. Slowly, almost reluctantly, the wheels lurch into motion. The ride stretches outward like a ribbon of time, unfolding mile by mile. At first the countryside is flat, fields of corn stretching endlessly, dew shimmering on stalks that sway in the morning breeze. The rhythm of the wheels becomes a lullaby, a steady clatter that seems to hypnotize passengers into silence. Farmers pause in their work to lift their heads as the train roars by, watching the carriages vanish into the horizon. Small towns flicker past, their wooden houses leaning slightly, paint faded by weather, with laundry strung across porches and children chasing dogs along dirt roads. Inside the carriage, the air is thick with a mixture of scents, varnished wood, cigar smoke, and the faint perfume of a lady's hat adorned with artificial violets. Gentlemen fold their newspapers with deliberate care, eyes lingering on engravings of the fair's palaces and towers. A woman hushes her child, pointing out the fields as though they were wonders themselves. The conductor moves through the aisles with practiced steps, checking tickets, tipping his cap with the quiet dignity of one who has done this countless times before. The passengers are bound together by something intangible, the promise of seeing what newspapers have declared the most astonishing creation of modern times. They have read of gleaming buildings rising as if out of nowhere, of inventions that harness the mysterious power of electricity, of cultures gathered from the far corners of the globe. The train does not merely carry bodies, it carries imaginations, hopes, and a curiosity that quickens the pulse. The scenery begins to change as the train rolls closer to the city. The land grows more crowded with signs of industry, chimneys rising like blackened fingers, warehouses clustered along the tracks, factories humming with morning labor. The smell of smoke thickens, mingling with the metallic tang of the rails. Telegraph wires stretch alongside the train, their poles ticking by in steady rhythm, carrying invisible messages faster than the fastest locomotive. The air hums with a sense of movement, of progress, as though the entire world is shifting towards some new horizon. The train slows as it approaches a larger town, the hiss of steam filling the station, iron wheels screeching against the rails. Passengers press against the windows, peering at the platform where hawkers shout out their goods. Sandwiches wrapped in wax paper, bottles of soda water, guidebooks printed hastily to keep pace with demand. Some passengers step off to stretch their legs, while others remain in their seats, unwilling to risk missing the conductor's call. The pause is brief, only enough to remind travelers of their bodies, their hunger, their thirst, before the whistle blows again and the journey continues. The closer the train draws to Chicago, the more restless the carriage becomes. Conversations grow livelier, voices rising above the steady hum of the engine. Some debate which exhibits they will visit first: the great Ferris Wheel, the mechanical marvels of Machinery Hall, the exotic Midway with its promises of foreign music and spectacle. Others lean back in their seats, eyes half closed, saving their energy for the day's demands. A man near the back begins to hum, a low tune carried from some forgotten tavern, blending with the rhythm of the wheels until it becomes part of the soundscape itself. The sky shifts as the sun climbs higher, its pale gold spreading across rooftops and church spires in the distance. The train now rattles through the outer edges of the city, past stockyards where cattle mill about in muddy pens, past endless rows of workers' houses with laundry hung like banners between them. The great city of Chicago reveals itself not all at once, but in fragments. Brick chimneys, steel bridges, smoke that curls and dissolves into the sky. Passengers crane their necks to glimpse what lies ahead. Children press their noses to the glass, smearing it with excitement. There is a tension now, a sense that the train is carrying them not just to a city, but to something larger, something that belongs to history itself. The White City, they have read, is not merely an exhibition, but a vision of what the future might hold, a place where beauty and progress walk hand in hand. The thought fills the carriage like a quiet electricity, sparking silently from one traveller to another. The train whistles as it passes over bridges, its sound echoing through the canyons of factories and warehouses. Streets grow busier, wagons rolling along cobblestones, horses stamping impatiently as drivers shout above the din. The city is alive with energy, yet beyond the smoke and the noise lies something altogether different. A place where marble façades rise like dreams, and the glow of new electric lights awaits the coming night. The train finally slows, brakes hissing, and the passengers stir from their long journey. Hats are adjusted, gloves smoothed, suitcases lifted down from racks. The air inside the carriage is thick now, heavy with anticipation. The whistle sounds one final time, long and low, and the train rolls into the station. Chicago's Grand Terminal is alive with movement. Porters rushing to carry baggage, newsboys weaving between legs, the sound of steam engines overlapping in a chaotic symphony. The smell of coal is everywhere, mingling with the sweat of the crowd and the faint sweetness of roasted peanuts sold from a nearby cart. The station is vast, with iron beams arching overhead like the ribs of some colossal beast. Travellers pour out into the concourse, each one moving with a sense of purpose. Some are bound for business, others for family. But for many, like those in this train, the fare is the destination. Their eyes are wide, their steps quick, as though fearing the day might vanish before they reach the gates. Outside, carriages line the street, their drivers calling out destinations, while electric streetcars hum along rails, their sparks crackling faintly. The city itself presses in on all sides. Tall buildings, crowded sidewalks, the ceaseless noise of industry. Yet somewhere beyond this rush lies the White City, rising on the shores of Lake Michigan, a place set apart from the smoke and grime, where gleaming palaces and quiet lagoons wait like something out of a dream. The travellers know this, and so they move forward, carried by the tide of the crowd, their steps merging with the rhythm of the city itself. The morning train has delivered them not just into Chicago, but into a story that feels larger than themselves, a story where every whistle, every wheel, every step has been carrying them towards something extraordinary. The day has only begun, and yet already there is a sense of crossing into another world. Stepping out from the press of the station, the air shifts. The clamour of whistles and the grinding weight of industry do not vanish, but they thin into the background as the journey begins again. This time, not by steel and steam, but by the slower rhythm of wheels drawn over cobblestones. Carriages rattle past in quick succession, their drivers raising their whips to the sky, urging their horses into the flow of traffic. Above, the sound of streetcars sings faintly along the wires, a steady hum that pulses in time with the growing anticipation. The crowd divides, each traveller following a chosen path, yet all are drawn in the same direction, as if compelled by a hidden current. Chicago in 1893 is no ordinary city. Only 2 decades earlier, flames had consumed its heart, leaving ruins where once stood proud brick and timber. But now, rising from that devastation, the city spreads outward in vast blocks of warehouses, hotels, and office towers, taller than most had ever seen. Smoke clings to the skyline, drifting upward in layers until even the sun itself seems veiled. Yet somewhere beyond the smoke, beyond the soot-stained rooftops, lies something entirely unexpected, a place unlike any other on Earth. And it is toward this promise that the carriages roll, their wheels striking sparks against the stone. The streets grow wider, straighter, as the journey continues. Shops display their wares behind glass, their windows filled with fine hats, polished shoes, and pocket watches ticking in unison. Children cling to their mothers' skirts, pointing at the passing parade of travellers bound for the fair. Newsboys dart between horses, waving pamphlets that proclaim in bold letters the wonders that await at Jackson Park, the Court of Honor, the Great Ferris Wheel, the palaces of glass and plaster. Each word is spoken with urgency, as if the marvels might vanish by evening, as if one must hurry to see them before they dissolve. The closer one draws to the lakefront, the more the air changes. The heavy scent of coal softens, carried off by a breeze that drifts in from the water. The noise of the city fades, replaced by a quieter, more measured rhythm, as though even the horses sense the threshold they are approaching. The streets no longer confine, but open outward, and suddenly there are glimpses of something pale and unfamiliar rising on the horizon. At first, it is only a shape, a line of white that catches the sunlight and holds it in a way brick and stone never could. Then the line grows taller, resolving into columns, domes, and façades that gleam against the blue of the lake. For many, the first sight is almost unsettling. Cities are built from grit and labour, their buildings scarred with smoke, their stones darkened by rain. But here, across the expanse of Jackson Park, something else has taken shape. It is as if marble palaces have sprung from the ground overnight, each one luminous and perfect, their surfaces reflecting the morning light with a brilliance that seems otherworldly. Together, they form a city within the city, a place set apart from the clamour of factories and stockyards. The name White City is not a poet's invention, but the simple truth of what the eyes behold. The carriage slows as the gates draw near, and travellers lean forward in their seats, straining for a better view. Towers rise above them, statues glimmer against the pale sky, and wide boulevards stretch out in careful symmetry. The fairgrounds are not a haphazard collection of exhibits, but a deliberate vision, a dream shaped by architects who sought not merely to build, but to inspire. Every line, every arch, every dome seems to speak of order, harmony, and grandeur. To step closer is to feel not only the weight of stone and plaster, but the presence of an idea made real. As the gates come into focus, the White City begins to reveal its rhythm. Visitors stream forward in steady lines, their footsteps merging into the hum of the crowd. The air is filled with the scent of fresh paint, mingled with the faint sweetness of flowers planted in neat rows along the walkways. Flags flutter from tall poles, their colours bright against the pale façades, while the sound of distant music drifts on the breeze, a brass band warming its instruments, the notes wavering like echoes across the lagoon. To pass through the gates is to enter another world. Behind lies the noise of Chicago, the rattle of wagons, the clamour of stockyards, the ceaseless smoke of industry. Before stretches something wholly different, wide promenades paved with stone, lagoons that mirror the sky, and buildings whose white walls glow in the sunlight as if lit from within. The Court of Honor rises at the center, its great basin lined with colonnades and statues, while domes and towers reach upward in careful balance. The architecture is not meant to be merely useful, it is meant to inspire awe, to remind visitors of ancient cities, of Rome, of Athens, of worlds half remembered and half dreamed. The first glimpse of the White City lingers in the mind because it feels like stepping into a dream that has somehow been made solid. Travelers pause at the gates, caught between motion and stillness, reluctant to move too quickly, unwilling to shatter the illusion. The fair is not simply seen, it is absorbed slowly, like music heard from a distance, each note unfolding into the next. The lagoon shimmers with reflections of domes and arches. The statues seem almost alive in their frozen grace, and the air itself feels charged with something new, something unspoken. There is a hum beneath it all, not the mechanical hum of engines or the roar of factories, but something subtler, the murmur of thousands of voices, the rustle of skirts and coats, the splash of oars across the water. It is the sound of humanity gathered not for labor or for war, but for wonder. For once, the noise of the world is not a burden, but a harmony, each sound blending into the next until it becomes a single current carrying all forward. Children tug at their parents' hands, pointing eagerly toward the buildings that rise like palaces. Couples walk slowly, their faces tilted upward, as though afraid to blink and lose the sight. Even the most reserved traveler cannot help but pause, their steps slowing as the weight of the moment settles in. It is not often that a city gives birth to another city within itself, one that exists not to endure, but to dazzle, to astonish, to vanish when its purpose is fulfilled. And yet, here it is, spread before them like a vision. The light shifts as clouds drift across the sky, and with each change, the White City reveals another face. In shadow, the buildings appear solemn, like ancient temples rising from the earth. In sunlight, they blaze with brilliance, their surfaces almost too bright to behold. Reflections ripple across the lagoons, bending and reshaping the façades into dreamlike forms. The world itself seems uncertain, as though unsure whether it is gazing at reality or at some imagined ideal. The first glimpse is not only of stone and plaster, of water and light, but of possibility. It is the glimpse of what a nation wishes to show itself and the world, that from smoke and ruin can rise beauty, that progress need not be grim, that a people, when united, can build not just factories and stockyards, but palaces and gardens. To stand at the gates and see the White City for the first time is to feel that the ordinary has been momentarily suspended, that one has stepped into a space where time itself seems slower, more deliberate, as though inviting the visitor to linger, to breathe, to wander without haste. The carriages empty their passengers, and the crowd flows steadily inward. Some rush forward, eager to see every marvel at once, while others move more slowly, savoring each detail. The sound of footsteps blends with the ripple of water and the faint strains of music. The first glimpse becomes the first step, and the White City waits, patient, gleaming, as if it has always been here and will always remain, even though all know it is but a fleeting dream, destined to fade when the fair is over. Yet in this moment, under this light, with the crowd pressing forward and the air filled with the mingled scents of flowers and fresh plaster, it feels eternal. The White City has revealed itself, and nothing beyond the gates matters. The smoke, the noise, the weary streets of the real Chicago, all fall away. What remains is this, a vision of marble and water, a place where the world gathers not to toil, but to marvel. And for those who have just arrived, who stand at the threshold of its gates, the first glimpse is enough to fill the heart with quiet wonder, carrying them forward into a day that will unfold like no other. The line moves forward, steady as a tide, each step carrying travelers closer to the threshold where the everyday world falls away. The gates loom ahead, not as barriers, but as invitations. their arches tall and commanding, adorned with intricate carvings that catch the light. Flags ripple above them in the breeze, their colours striking against the pale sky, while statues stand watch in solemn stillness, guardians of the wonders beyond. The closer the crowd draws, the more the sounds blend into a single, low murmur. The shuffle of shoes across stone, the rustle of skirts and coats, the faint clink of coins changing hands at the ticket booths. The voices of vendors drift along the edges, offering guidebooks, maps, and small souvenirs that promise to preserve the memory of what is about to unfold. Yet few pause to buy. Most are intent on reaching the gates themselves, as if fearing the vision might vanish should they delay. The ticket takers stand beneath the arches, their uniforms crisp, their movements brisk. Each exchange is brief, a slip of paper surrendered, a stub returned, a nod of passage. Yet within these small motions lies something greater, for the crossing of this threshold marks a transformation. On one side lies the city of smoke, of clamour, of industry. On the other, the white city spreads out in luminous order, a place conceived not for toil, but for wonder. Every traveller senses it, even if they cannot name it. The archway casts a shadow that cools the skin for a moment before the light returns. Passing beneath it is like stepping from one realm into another. The sound changes first. The harsh clang of Chicago fades behind, replaced by the softer rhythm of fountains trickling nearby. The distant strains of a band tuning its brass instruments. The hum of countless voices blending like a subdued choir. Then the air itself changes, touched with the sweetness of flowers, planted in careful beds, mingled with the faint mineral scent of fresh plaster and paint that still clings to the façades. Beyond the gates, the white city opens itself gradually, not all at once. Wide promenades stretch outward, lined with rows of electric lamps that, though silent in the daylight, promise a brilliance when evening falls. Statues rise from pedestals along the walkways, allegorical figures of commerce, agriculture, and progress, each one gazing outward with serene expressions. The paths converge upon vistas carefully designed to draw the eye forward, toward domes that gleam in the distance, toward the shimmering surface of the lagoon that reflects the pale façades like a mirror. The first steps inside are taken slowly. Travellers glance upward, pausing as if their feet have forgotten the urgency that carried them through the city streets. The scale of the place compels stillness. Buildings soar higher than imagined, their surfaces so white they seem to catch and hold the sunlight itself. Arches span with perfect symmetry, while domes curve like half-risen moons against the blue sky. The sense of order is overwhelming, yet calming. Nothing feels accidental. Every line seems drawn to create harmony. Children cling to their parents' hands, their eyes wide at the sight of fountains spraying arcs of clear water into the air. Couples walk arm in arm, speaking in hushed tones, as though they have entered a cathedral. Even the most hurried visitors slow their pace, caught in the quiet gravity of the place. There is movement everywhere, yet it unfolds without chaos, as though the design of the fair itself imposes rhythm upon the crowd. The gates recede behind, yet the memory of passing beneath them lingers. They are more than an entry. They are a dividing line. Each traveller feels it differently. For some, a thrill that quickens the breath. For others, a sense of solemnity, of being part of something larger than themselves. The white city does not shout its presence, but reveals it with calm confidence, unfolding vistas step by step, inviting rather than demanding attention. A grand avenue stretches forward, its stone pavement warmed by the morning sun. Along its edges, flower beds burst with colour. Red geraniums, yellow marigolds, purple asters, all arranged in patterns that echo the symmetry of the buildings. The air is alive with their fragrance, mingled with the distant aroma of roasted nuts and sweet confections drifting from stalls further within the grounds. Every sense is gently stirred, every detail calculated to soothe and astonish at once. As the crowd moves inward, the court of honour begins to reveal itself in glimpses. At first, Only a corner of the Great Basin appears, a shimmer of water glimpsed between statues and columns. Then the avenue widens, and suddenly the full expanse opens to view. The basin lies still and reflective, a vast mirror stretching beneath the sky. Around it rise colonnades and palaces, their façades glowing white, their domes crowned with gilded details that catch the light like fire. Boats drift slowly across the water, their oars dipping with quiet rhythm, carrying visitors from one pavilion to another. The entire scene feels less like a fairground than a vision of an imagined city, one that exists outside of time. Yet before this wonder can be fully absorbed, the gates themselves draw the eyes once more. Turning back, one sees the city of Chicago framed in their arch, smoke rising faintly in the distance, carriages rattling past. The contrast is startling. Behind, the restless machinery of the age. Ahead, a dream made solid, built not to endure, but to inspire. For a moment, the visitor stands between two worlds, 1 foot in each, sensing the fragile boundary that separates them. And then the pull of the white city wins, as it always does, drawing the traveler deeper along its paths. The act of crossing the gates is quiet, almost ordinary in its motions, yet the memory of it will linger long after the day ends. For it is here, beneath the carved arches and fluttering flags, that the first true step into the white city is taken. It is here that the clamour of Chicago falls away, and the measured harmony of the fair begins to speak. It is here that the visitor becomes not merely a traveller, but a participant in something vast, something fleeting, something beautiful. The gates grow smaller with each step forward, until they are only part of the background, another piece of the city's fabric. Ahead lies the expanse of lagoons and palaces, of music and invention, of wonders that seem to have gathered from every corner of the globe. But it is the memory of crossing that threshold, of stepping beneath the arches and emerging into light, that marks the beginning of the journey in earnest. The fair stretches outward, waiting. The crowd disperses into its avenues, carried by curiosity, by the promise of marvels hidden just beyond the next colonnade. Yet all who pass beneath the gates carry with them the same quiet impression that they have left behind something ordinary and entered into a world where stone gleams, water mirrors the sky, and every step leads deeper into a dream. The avenue widens, and the crowd that once pressed forward in a single stream begins to scatter, spreading out across the great expanse that now lies open before them. The court of honor unfolds gradually, like a curtain lifting on a stage too vast for the eye to take in at once. What first appeared in fragments beyond the gates now reveals its full symmetry. A basin of water so broad it seems almost like a small lake, its surface calm and reflective, cradled by palaces of gleaming white. The basin stretches out like a mirror, catching the pale glow of the buildings and doubling them in its depths. The colonnades along the water's edge rise in stately rows, their columns perfectly proportioned, their reflections trembling faintly with each ripple. Statues line the shore, poised in stillness, their figures frozen mid-motion, yet given a kind of life by the dance of light across their surfaces. From the center of the water, fountains rise in graceful arcs, their spray dissolving into mist that glitters in the sun before falling back to join the quiet rhythm of the lagoon. The court of honor feels both immense and intimate. Its scale overwhelms, yet its order calms. The buildings are vast, yet every detail, the curve of an arch, the placement of a statue, the angle of a dome, seems designed to meet the eye gently, to guide the gaze without effort. Visitors slow their steps, some stopping altogether, as though the mere act of looking is enough, as though motion might disturb the balance of the place. The architecture carries echoes of forgotten worlds. The domes recall Rome at its height, the colonnades suggest Athens in its prime, and the statues seem drawn from mythologies that span centuries. Yet none of it is ancient. The white city is new, born from timber and plaster, raised by human hands within the span of months. It is a vision not inherited, but invented. A dream of what a nation wished to show of itself. Not its smoke and its stockyards, but its order, its beauty, its confidence in progress. The Court of Honor is the heart of that vision, the place where all the threads of the fair gather into one harmonious scene. The air itself seems quieter here. Though thousands of visitors wander its promenades, the sound disperses into a low murmur, softened by the breadth of the space. The fountains add their own gentle voice, a constant whisper that seems to soothe rather than distract. The sunlight striking the white façades reflects softly, filling the space with a glow that is bright but never harsh. Even time feels slower within the court, as though measured not by the ticking of clocks, but by the drift of shadows across the colonnades. Boats glide slowly across the basin, their oars dipping in steady rhythm. The water ripples outward, bending the reflections of domes and statues into wavering forms that shimmer like illusions. Passengers sit quietly within them, gazing upward as they pass beneath bridges that link one promenade to another. From the shore, the movement of boats only deepens the stillness of the place, their unhurried passage a reminder that this is not a space of haste, but of contemplation. Visitors gather at the water's edge, leaning over stone balustrades to watch the play of light upon the ripples. Children point at the fountains, their laughter echoing faintly before dissolving into the broader hum of the crowd. Couples pause beneath the statues, speaking in low voices that seem to match the solemn grace of the figures around them. The Court of Honor does not demand silence, yet it draws it forth naturally, as though those who enter instinctively lower their voices in recognition of something greater than themselves. Statues line the basin like sentinels, each one crafted with care, each representing some ideal: strength, wisdom, progress, industry. Their marble faces remain fixed, yet they seem to watch the crowd with a quiet patience, as though reminding the visitor that all this beauty is not merely for pleasure, but for reflection. To gaze upon them is to sense that the fair is more than spectacle, that it is also a statement, a declaration that the age of machines and smoke can also give birth to harmony and grace. The gilded details that crown the domes catch the light and flash briefly, as if touched by fire. Birds wheel overhead, their wings cutting across the pale sky, their reflections darting across the surface of the basin. Each movement, whether of water, of light, or of life, only serves to deepen the sense that the court is not fixed, but alive, that it breathes with the rhythm of the day. The colonnades stretch outward in perfect symmetry, their repetition soothing to the eye. The mind follows their lines as though tracing a melody, moving from one column to the next, from one arch to another, until the entire space feels like a composition, a work of art not on canvas but in stone, water, and air. To stand within it is to feel oneself not outside of art but inside it, surrounded on every side by its harmony. As the day advances, the sunlight shifts, and the court transforms with it. In the morning, the basin glows with brilliance, the reflections sharp and bright. By midday, the light grows softer, casting long shadows across the promenades, giving depth to the colonnades and solemnity to the statues. In the evening, as lamps begin to flicker to life, the water mirrors both the fading sky and the first glimmers of electric light, blending natural and human illumination into a single vision. The court is never the same twice, yet always itself, always whole. The visitors feel this change without needing to name it. They linger on benches placed along the promenades, some opening guidebooks, others simply watching the water. Time passes unnoticed, for within the court, the ordinary measures of time, hours, minutes, schedules, lose their urgency. What matters is the slow unfolding of the space itself, the way light, water, and architecture weave together to create a calm too rare in the restless modern world. Even the distant hum of machinery, which elsewhere dominates the fairgrounds, seems softened here. The court is not without sound, but its sounds are measured: the splash of fountains, the murmur of voices, the creak of oars. It is a harmony that invites not activity, but reflection, To wander here is to be reminded that progress need not be loud to be profound, that beauty can emerge not only in silence, but in the careful balance of many voices blending as one. There is something almost dreamlike in the court's perfection. Travelers who have come from across the nation, weary from long journeys, find themselves pausing here as though waking into a dream rather than from one. The White City was built to astonish, yet in the Court of Honor, astonishment gives way to stillness, to contemplation. The heart beats slower, the breath deepens, and the mind lingers not on tasks or obligations, but simply on the scene before it. For many, this moment becomes the one they carry long after the fair has ended. The Ferris Wheel will turn, the Midway will dazzle, Machinery Hall will roar with invention, but it is the memory of the court that endures. The still water, the white façades, the glow of light across domes and statues. It is not the excitement of progress, but the quiet assurance of beauty that stays in the heart. And so the Court of Honor, vast yet calming, reflective yet alive, becomes not just a space within the fair, but the symbol of it. To stand here is to sense what the architects intended, that the White City should not merely display inventions and wonders, but embody a vision of harmony, of a world where progress and beauty walk together. The visitors move onward, their steps lightened, their voices softened. They leave the basin behind, yet its reflection lingers in their minds like the after-image of light upon closed eyes. Ahead lie other wonders, other paths, but for now, the Court of Honor has impressed itself upon them, not with noise or spectacle, but with the calm authority of order and grace. From the basin of the court, the water does not end, but stretches outward, narrowing into channels that wind through the fairgrounds like silver threads, stitched into a tapestry of white stone and green lawns. The lagoon carries with it the same calm that defines the Court of Honor. Yet here, the space feels more open, less contained. It moves like a river slowed by stillness, its surface broken only by the slow dip of oars or the faint drift of a passing breeze. The walk along its edge begins almost without notice. A visitor, drawn forward by the gentle curve of the balustrades, finds themselves following the water as it slips away from the formal symmetry of the basin into a more natural course. The white facades of the grand palaces remain visible, rising in the distance, their reflections still shimmering in the surface of the water. But here they are softened by trees, by the presence of shaded banks, by the hum of voices carried more distantly across the air. The lagoon is not only water, but stage. Bridges arch gracefully across it, linking promenades and gardens, their forms mirrored below in trembling outlines. Boats glide beneath them, their movement unhurried, as if time has loosened its hold upon them. The passengers sit quietly, some with parasols lifted against the sun, others leaning forward to watch the play of water against stone. Their passage is soundless but for the occasional creak of wood or the soft splash of an oar breaking the surface. Along the shore, statues appear again, though here they seem less like guardians and more like companions to the wanderer. Figures of industry, of myth, of allegory stand among the trees, their pale surfaces warmed by sunlight filtered through leaves. Some lean forward as though in thought, others stand in poised movement, yet all seem to share in the stillness of the scene. Their presence gives the lagoon a sense of quiet conversation, as though the air itself holds within it stories too old to be spoken aloud. The paths curve gently, always returning the visitor's gaze to the water. To walk here is to feel a rhythm, step, glance, reflection. The ripples catch the light in shifting patterns, fragments of the sky drawn downward and broken into countless pieces, each one flashing briefly before dissolving back into the whole. The water carries reflections of domes and towers, bending them into wavering forms, reminding the eye that even stone and plaster can appear dreamlike when seen through the veil of water. There is a softness to the lagoon that the court, for all its grandeur, does not possess. The court is symmetry, precision, a vision of order. The lagoon is gentler, its curves guided not by compass and ruler, but by the natural inclination of water to bend and wander. It offers not a single grand view, but a series of unfolding scenes. A bridge here, a boat there, a dome glimpsed between trees. To walk along it is not to stand in awe, but to drift in quiet observation, each moment carrying into the next with ease. The crowd here seems less hurried, as though the water itself has slowed their steps. Families pause on the banks to watch the boats. Children lean over railings, dropping pebbles and laughing at the ripples that follow. Elderly visitors rest on benches, their faces turned toward the light, as though content simply to breathe within this space. The fair is full of noise and spectacle, yet along the lagoon, even the chatter of the crowd takes on a softer tone. Absorbed by the breadth of water and the canopy of trees, the air carries with it the mingled scents of earth, water, and the faint sweetness of flowers planted in careful beds along the shore. Birds skim the surface, dipping low before rising again, their wings casting brief shadows across the reflections. At times, the breeze stirs, carrying with it the sound of distant machinery or the faint strains of music from a pavilion. Yet these notes arrive softened, as though filtered through the calm of the water before reaching the ear. The bridges invite pauses. To stand upon one is to see the lagoon from above, to watch as boats pass beneath, their passengers lifted briefly into silhouette before disappearing again into light. From here, the expanse of the fair reveals itself in fragments. Domes rising above the trees, towers outlined against the sky, the long sweep of colonnades fading into distance. The lagoon ties them together, its silver ribbon leading the eye from one scene to the next, uniting the whole not by force, but by flow. At times, the lagoon widens, forming small inlets where the water rests more deeply. Here, the reflections grow sharper, the surface like polished glass. A cloud drifts overhead, mirrored perfectly until a breeze passes, scattering its image into trembling fragments. Visitors pause at these still points, caught by the illusion of sky captured in water. For a moment, it is difficult to know where the world above ends and the world below begins. The boats themselves seem like part of the scenery, their motions so slow that they blend with the rhythm of the lagoon. Painted in soft colours, they drift almost silently, their oars dipping with unhurried grace. The ferrymen move without urgency, guiding their passengers not toward any destination, but simply along the course of the water, as though the act of movement itself were the purpose. For those aboard, the fair is not rushed past, but absorbed slowly, each reflection an arch passing like a page in a book. The lagoon is not without grandeur, yet its grandeur is quieter than that of the court. Here, beauty is not imposed, but revealed. The visitor finds it not in a single overwhelming sight, but in the way sunlight falls across water, in the way a statue's reflection doubles its stillness, in the way trees bend gently toward the shore. It is beauty that does not declare itself, but waits to be noticed, patient and enduring. As the path continues, the visitor becomes aware of how the lagoon connects the fair like a hidden thread. It flows past palaces of agriculture, of transportation, of fine arts, each mirrored in its waters. It curves past gardens and pavilions, carrying with it the reflections of every dream the exposition sought to embody. In following it, one does not simply walk, but drifts through the essence of the fair itself, guided always by the calm persistence of water. The day grows, and with it the light changes. The water, once silver, takes on deeper hues. Shadows lengthen across the paths, and the reflections grow softer, more diffuse. Lamps begin to line the bridges, their glass globes catching the first hints of evening. Soon, electricity will transform the lagoon as it does the court, casting light across its surface until it gleams like a ribbon of stars laid upon the earth. Yet even in anticipation, the lagoon holds its calm, untroubled by the approach of night. Visitors who linger here often find themselves reluctant to leave. The lagoon offers no single climax, no moment that demands attention. Instead, it offers continuity, a sense that one can walk for hours and always find something new, yet always feel the same calm. To follow its path is to follow a dream that does not end, but circles, winding back upon itself, as water always does. In time, the wanderer may return toward the heart of the fair, to the domes and colonnades, to the noise and spectacle, but the memory of the lagoon lingers, not as a single image, but as a series of quiet impressions. The ripple of water beneath a bridge, the glimmer of light upon a fountain, the slow drift of a boat beneath the trees. It is not grandeur alone that defines the white city, but the stillness woven through it, and nowhere is that stillness more present than along the wandering paths of the lagoon. From the shaded paths along the lagoon, the white façades rise again, vast and commanding, their reflection folding into the water before dissolving as the breeze moves across its surface. The steps of the wanderer, once slowed by the rhythm of water, now find direction toward one of the largest structures in the entire fair, a building that seems less like a hall and more like a horizon of stone and glass. The palace of agriculture does not announce itself with ornament alone, but with scale. Its breadth stretches so wide that to take it in at once is almost impossible, the eye travelling along colonnades and arches that seem to repeat without end. The façade is adorned with sculptural reliefs, wreaths, and garlands, but the true impression it gives is one of magnitude, of a structure designed to contain not merely objects, but entire visions of a world's bounty. Its dome rises above the expanse, catching sunlight and holding it, a beacon visible even from distant parts of the grounds. Approaching its entrance, the murmur of the crowd grows fuller. Families, gentlemen, and farmers alike drift toward its doors, drawn by the promise of seeing the richness of earth gathered into one place. There is no clamour here, only a steady procession, each visitor absorbed in the same sense of curiosity. The massive doors, framed in archways of pale stone, stand open, and from within comes a soft diffusion of light, filtered through acres of glass above. Crossing the threshold is like stepping into another world. The coolness of shade replaces the warmth of the sun, yet the vastness of the space stretches farther than the sky itself. Rows of towering columns support a roof of glass and iron, beneath which spreads a hall so immense that its end cannot be seen at first glance. The ceiling, latticed with beams, seems distant, almost as though the heavens themselves had been lowered to rest upon this hall. Light falls from above, softened by the great panes of glass, spreading in pale gold across displays, pathways, and the countless figures wandering below. The first impression is of abundance. Everywhere the eye turns, displays rise in careful order, grains heaped in pyramids, fruits arranged in gleaming rows, machines displayed beside the crops they are designed to harvest. The air is filled with the mingled scents of earth and produce, dry straw, fresh apples, ground wheat, all blending into a fragrance that seems both familiar and strangely new in this vast, enclosed setting. Along the aisles, states of the Union present their harvests. Kansas with its towers of wheat, Minnesota with its displays of flour, California with fruits so brilliant they seem almost painted. Each seeks not merely to show, but to impress, arranging its offerings with a pride that extends beyond agriculture into identity itself. Flags and banners drape above the stalls, and carved plaques announce names that speak of places across a continent. To wander among them is to walk through the geography of the nation, each state condensed into symbols of what its soil can yield. Beyond these lie international displays, where other nations lay out the richness of their own fields. Canada offers wheat as fine as any from the Dakotas, while distant lands present rice, teas, and spices, their scents faint but distinct among the heavier odours of grain. The visitor is reminded that agriculture is not merely local labour, but a global web, binding together distant climates and cultures into the shared sustenance of humanity. Between these displays, machinery rises like monuments of a different kind. Reapers, threshers, ploughs of gleaming steel, all set not in fields but upon polished platforms. Their size astonishes, their wheels taller than the heads of the men who stand beside them. They shine under the filtered sunlight. the polish of their surfaces catching the light like mirrors. Though silent here, one imagines the roar of their motion, the endless fields they are meant to tame. In their presence, the visitor senses both the promise and the weight of progress, the transformation of toil into industry, of hand labor into mechanized force. The hall hums with a kind of subdued awe. People move not quickly but steadily, their eyes lifted to displays, their steps slowed by the immensity of what surrounds them. A farmer pauses before a machine he has only heard about in distant reports, his hands unconsciously tracing the motion it might make. Children press close to baskets of apples, polished to unnatural sheen, their reflections glimmering in the skin of the fruit. Ladies, in their quiet grace, remark upon the arrangement of wheat stalks tied with silk ribbons, as though the harvest itself had been dressed for exhibition. There is a sense of ceremony in the way the displays are presented. Wheat is not merely poured, but sculpted. Corn is not merely stacked, but woven into towers. Fruits are arranged in arcs and pyramids, as if forming offerings. The abundance of the earth has been shaped into art, each display less about the sustenance itself than about what it represents. Plenty, progress, the mastery of land. The farther one walks, the more the scale overwhelms. Aisle leads into aisle, each filled with its own wonders. One section holds wines from distant vineyards, the bottles arranged in glowing rows. Another displays seeds of every variety, their smallness given significance by their sheer number. Elsewhere stand exhibits of forestry, planks of wood polished until their grains gleam, entire trees suggested by the presence of a single massive trunk laid upon the floor. The sound within the hall is hushed, though thousands may be present. The great space absorbs the voices, spreading them into a soft murmur that rises and falls like the rustle of leaves. Now and then, a single note emerges, the laughter of a child, the clatter of footsteps against stone, the faint creak of a display being adjusted. But these sounds are swallowed quickly by the immensity of the hall. It is as though the space itself insists upon quiet, its magnitude demanding not noise, but reflection. Light plays a central role in the atmosphere. From above, it falls in broad beams, softened by the glass roof, diffused across the hall until even the farthest corners are touched by a gentle glow. Dust motes drift through the air, catching the light, floating like tiny stars in this enclosed sky. The displays, though vast, seem unified by this shared illumination, as if the hall itself were one great canvas and the exhibits merely strokes upon it. As the wanderer continues, fatigue may set in, for the hall seems endless. Yet it is a fatigue softened by fascination, the kind that slows the step rather than halts it. Benches are placed at intervals, and those who rest upon them gaze not idly but with the same quiet attention, their eyes following the rise of arches, the play of shadows, the ceaseless movement of the crowd. Time here loses some of its sharpness, replaced by a drifting sense that hours pass without notice, absorbed into the rhythm of walking, watching, and wondering. Near the center of the hall, fountains play, their water lifted into arcs that catch the light before falling again into marble basins. The sound of water mingles with the hush of voices, a reminder that even in this space of industry and harvest, the element of nature still holds sway. Visitors gather around, some to rest, others simply to watch the ceaseless motion of water rising and falling, an endless cycle that mirrors the rhythms of the earth itself. The Palace of Agriculture stands not merely as a building, but as a vision. The bounty of the earth gathered under one roof, the fruits of labor displayed as both achievement and promise. It is a hall where abundance is no longer hidden in distant fields, but revealed openly, made tangible to all who walk its aisles. For the visitor, the experience is less about learning something new than about feeling part of something larger, the endless cycle of soil and seed, of growth and harvest, drawn together into one vast and luminous space. And so the wanderer moves onward, their steps carrying them across polished floors, past endless displays, through air heavy with the mingled scents of grain and fruit, until the immensity itself becomes familiar. The hall does not end abruptly, but seems to dissolve gradually, its exhibits giving way to open doors where sunlight waits once more. To step outside is to return to the brightness of the fairgrounds, yet the memory of the hall lingers, vast and echoing, as though its space continues within the mind long after leaving it. From the quiet bounty of grains and fruits, the path widens, curving toward another colossal structure. The air seems to change as one approaches, less fragrant with the scents of earth and harvest, and filled instead with a faint metallic tang, as though the building itself breathes iron. Machinery Hall stands ahead, a giant in its own right, rivaling even the vastness of agriculture's palace. Yet its spirit is entirely different. Where the Harvest Hall whispered of soil and seed, this place hums of invention, of wheels and engines, of human ambition harnessed to the unrelenting march of progress. Its facade is broad, commanding, the sweep of its roofline stretching far beyond the eye's easy measure. High arched windows gleam in the sunlight, their panes giving glimpses of the moving world inside. Shifting shadows of engines, the silhouettes of wheels taller than men, the faint glimmer of polished steel. Above the great entrances, banners proclaim the triumph of industry, the achievements of nations that have placed their faith not only in fields but in machines. Crossing into the hall is to step into a world alive with sound and motion. The space is vast, its roof soaring like a cathedral of iron and glass. Yet unlike the hushed reverence of the Palace of Agriculture, here the air vibrates with energy. The floor trembles faintly beneath steady rhythms, the beating heart of engines that never cease. The visitor is met not with silence, but with a deep, continuous murmur, the layered roar of progress itself. Everywhere the eye turns, machines rise in ordered ranks. Great dynamos spin with hypnotic steadiness, their coils glowing faintly as they turn. Belts stretch from one gear to another, snapping with taut precision, carrying power invisibly across the hall. Steam engines breathe steadily, pistons rising and falling with measured strength, their brass fittings gleaming in the shafts of light that filter through the roof. The visitor cannot help but feel both awe and humility in their presence. The machines seem less like tools than like living forces, breathing in smoke and steam, exhaling power. The centerpiece is unmistakable. Toward the heart of the hall, mounted upon its massive foundations, rests the great Corliss engine, an embodiment of the age's might. Its flywheels tower above the heads of the crowd, turning with measured grace, neither hurried nor hesitant, as though time itself bent to their rhythm. It drives not a single mechanism, but an entire network, its power distributed through shafts and belts to countless exhibits around it. To stand before it is to feel the hum of progress in one's bones, a vibration that carries through the floor, into the air, into the body itself. Visitors gather around in clusters, watching the steady, ceaseless motion. Some stare in silence, struck by its enormity, while others point out its details, the polished bearings, the glistening rods, the way each movement fits into another with perfect harmony. Farmers who just moments ago admired displays of wheat now gaze in equal wonder at the machine that promises to transform how that wheat is milled, transported, and consumed. Children tug at their parents' sleeves, their eyes wide at the spectacle of wheels taller than houses. The scene is alive, yet the rhythm of the machine remains calm, unyielding, as if to remind all who gather that progress is vast and steady, not frantic. Walking farther into the hall, one passes endless marvels. Printing presses stand ready, their rollers gleaming with fresh ink, ready to spill words across paper faster than the human hand could ever write. Looms clatter softly, weaving cloth with mechanical fingers that never tire. Engines of every description stand side by side, compact, massive, steam-driven, electric, all representing the unshakable conviction that no field of human labor will remain untouched by invention. What astonishes most is the sheer diversity. Here is a machine designed to polish glass, its arms moving delicately with surprising grace. There, a contraption for cutting timber, its saws gleaming sharp, the scent of freshly sliced wood still rising from its work. Across the hall, engines for pumping water throb with quiet insistence, while others stand ready to drive carriages, ships, or elevators. It is as if every human endeavor has been distilled into a mechanism, each one promising to multiply effort, to replace strain with efficiency, to turn time itself into a more obedient servant. The noise is constant, yet it is not chaos. Each machine contributes its own note, some a hiss of steam, others the steady clank of metal, the whir of belts, the deep hum of dynamos. Together they form a kind of mechanical symphony, a music of progress that fills the hall without pause. To the visitor it may feel overwhelming at first, yet soon the mind adjusts, and the sounds blend into a rhythm not unlike the steady breaking of waves. It becomes background, a lull of industry that carries the wanderer onward through aisle after aisle. National pride is evident here, as in the Palace of Agriculture. American machines dominate the central aisles, massive and confident, while along the sides stand exhibits from Europe and beyond. Germany presents its intricate precision tools, gleaming with exactness. England brings engines rooted in tradition, yet formidable in scale. France offers designs touched by elegance, their polished surfaces hinting at artistry as much as function. Each nation claims its place, each exhibit a declaration not only of engineering, but of identity, as though the hum of machinery were itself a kind of flag. The human presence, though dwarfed by the machines, is never absent. Men in waistcoats explain the workings of engines to curious onlookers, their hands blackened with oil, their words earnest and full of pride. Demonstrators feed material into machines, allowing the crowd to witness transformation before their eyes. Raw cotton becoming cloth, rough logs becoming planks, sheets of paper covered with words and images in an instant. The crowd murmurs in appreciation, their faces lit with wonder not at the artistry of nature, but at the ingenuity of human invention. Yet amid the grandeur, there is also a subtle unease. For some, the machines are too vast, their power too impersonal. The farmer who once labored with his hands may look upon a reaper with both admiration and uncertainty, recognizing in its steel arms both freedom and displacement. The quiet seamstress may watch a loom that never tires and feel a pang of something unspoken. Progress is magnificent, but it is also relentless, and its roar, however mesmerizing, does not easily fade from the mind. Still, the hall does not dwell on unease. Its very structure insists upon celebration. The iron trusses arch above like the ribs of some colossal creature, holding within them the machinery of an age. Sunlight streams through glass high above, glinting off polished steel, making every surface gleam. The hall itself feels alive, not merely a container of machines, but a machine in its own right, breathing with steam and power, humming with invisible currents of electricity. Time passes strangely here. Minutes and hours blur beneath the constancy of motion. The machines do not slow, do not tire, do not rest, and so the wanderer loses the sense of day's passage. The air grows warm with the breath of engines, and yet it is never unpleasant. It merely wraps itself around the visitor, drawing them deeper into the rhythm of the hall. Each turn reveals yet another marvel. Elevators rising with smooth precision, turbines spinning with invisible strength, generators sending sparks that leap like fireflies in controlled arcs. Eventually, the visitor's pace slows, not from disinterest, but from the sheer weight of impressions. The hall overwhelms not with a single sight, but with 1,000, each demanding its share of attention, each offering its own vision of what the world might become. To leave is not to abandon it, but to carry its hum within, the steady pulse of engines echoing long after stepping back into the open air. As the doors swing open again, the sunlight floods back, sharper after the filtered glow of the hall. The noise, once constant, fades behind, leaving a strange quiet in its absence, as though the ear still listens for the steady turn of wheels, the hiss of steam, the hum of dynamos. The fairgrounds stretch outward once more, the buildings gleaming, the lagoon glimmering in the light. But within the wanderer lingers the unmistakable echo of machinery, the roar of progress that cannot be forgotten, a sound both of triumph and of inevitability. Stepping out from the press of Machinery Hall, the air feels startling in its stillness. The body has grown accustomed to the steady pulse of pistons and the unending clatter of gears, and now the silence outside seems almost unnatural, as though the world has stopped turning for a moment. Yet it is not silence at all, only the gentler sounds of the fair returning. Footsteps along gravel paths, the low murmur of voices, the distant cry of vendors, and the faint lap of water against the lagoon's edge. The sun has begun to tilt toward the horizon. The white city glows softly in its light, the pale façades of its buildings touched with gold. The great domes and colonnades, so dazzling beneath midday brilliance, now seem gentler, less commanding, as though they too are preparing to surrender to the evening. Shadows lengthen across the plazas, deepening the contrasts between marble white and gathering dusk. One's steps move almost without thought, carried by the flow of people who wander toward the water's edge. The fairgrounds are vast, yet there is a natural rhythm that guides the crowd, drawing them forward with quiet insistence. Across the lagoon, rising above the trees and rooftops, a shape begins to catch the eye. Slender at first, then unmistakable. It is the electric tower, standing apart, yet commanding all attention, even from a distance. In the fading light, it appears almost spectral. Its form, tall and deliberate, stretches into the evening sky. By day, its structure is impressive enough, a shaft of architecture rising nearly 200 feet, adorned with terraces and crowned with a figure that gestures skyward. But at this hour, as twilight deepens, it begins to reveal its truer nature. Not merely a monument of stone and steel, but a beacon meant for night. For around its heights, though the sun has not fully set, faint points of light already glimmer, scattered like stars awakening early. The path curves along the lagoon. The water mirrors the tower's form in soft ripples, its reflection stretching long and unsteady across the surface. Small boats drift lazily beneath bridges, their passengers lifting eyes upward to the glow. The air is cooler here, touched with the dampness of evening. A faint scent of smoke drifts on the breeze, food stalls lighting their fires, lamps beginning to burn. But it is overpowered by anticipation. The crowd knows what is coming. Drawing closer, the details sharpen. The tower rests upon a broad base, its sides adorned with balustrades and steps. Around it are smaller pavilions and statues, arranged as though to form a court of honor. Flags stir in the soft air. At intervals along its height, balconies protrude, each lined with lamps that now begin to burn more brightly as the dusk thickens. Yet these are not the yellow flames of gaslight, nor the wavering glow of torches. They are steadier, whiter, stranger, electric, in their very essence, a promise of the future. The world in 1893 is still half in shadow, half in glow. For most visitors who walk the fairgrounds, electric light is a wonder glimpsed only rarely, perhaps in a city street or a wealthy household. Many have never seen it at all until this moment, and so the electric tower is not merely a structure to them, it is a vision. They gaze upward with expressions caught between reverence and disbelief, as though witnessing not architecture but revelation. The lamps grow brighter with each passing minute. First a soft shimmer, then a distinct radiance, then an undeniable blaze. They climb the tower's sides in orderly rows, outlining its every contour. Lines of light ascend from base to pinnacle, tracing its rise with steady brilliance. At the summit, the great figure gleams as though aflame, its raised arm pointing to a sky now deepening into indigo. Around the crowd, murmurs swell into gasps, into words half-formed and then abandoned, for speech feels inadequate. And then, as the sun dips fully below the horizon, the tower becomes what it was meant to be. It is no longer a structure of stone and metal, but a pillar of light radiating across the fairgrounds, mirrored in the lagoon, visible from every corner of the White City. Thousands of bulbs blaze together in unison, a constellation anchored to Earth, brighter than the stars themselves. The night is conquered in an instant. The effect is overwhelming. Buildings that seemed pale and hushed in dusk are now bathed in reflected brilliance. Their columns gleam as though sculpted of marble infused with light. The waters of the lagoon shimmer with long, trembling trails, gold and white intertwining with the darkness. Faces in the crowd are illuminated, each visitor caught in the glow, transformed for a moment into part of the spectacle. The sound of the crowd shifts with the light. Where before there was low conversation, now there is a hush, almost reverent. Strangers stand shoulder to shoulder, their eyes lifted as one. For a moment, the machinery, the exhibits, the noise of commerce and invention, all of it falls away. What remains is a single vision, that of light itself, summoned not by sun or fire, but by human design. The tower is not alone in its brilliance. Across the grounds, other buildings too are strung with electric lamps, their outlines sharpened against the night. The Court of Honor glows with a majesty that daylight could never provide, its façades shimmering as if cast in ivory. Bridges sparkle with lines of light, their arches reflected in the waters below. Even the statues seem alive, their marble softened by illumination, their forms emerging from shadow like presences awakened. Yet it is the tower that commands all eyes, the central flame of the White City's dream. For those who wander nearer, the experience grows even more vivid. Standing at its base, one must tilt the head back until the neck aches to follow its rise. The glow is intense, almost dazzling, yet never flickers. The lamps burn with a steadiness unlike any candle or lantern, their light pure and unyielding. The hum of hidden generators carries faintly through the air, a reminder that this spectacle, though ethereal, is rooted in the raw strength of engines and dynamos. Climbing the terraces, visitors find themselves surrounded by the glow. Lamps line the railings, casting soft pools of brightness at their feet. From these heights, the view stretches outward across the fair, lagoons shimmering, colonnades gleaming, domes outlined in light. The White City is no longer merely white, but radiant. Its architecture transformed into something at once real and dreamlike, solid yet otherworldly. And still, the crowd lingers. Time seems to pause. Conversations resume softly, yet they circle always back to the same marvel. How is it possible, some ask, for night to be turned into day? How can mere wires carry such power, unseen yet unrelenting? A farmer from a small town, where evenings end in darkness after sunset, shakes his head in quiet wonder. A child, clutching her mother's hand, stares upward as though the tower were alive. Even those who live in cities, familiar with street lamps and arc-lit boulevards, find themselves moved, for never before has light been gathered and displayed with such audacity. The tower does more than illuminate, it transforms. The fairgrounds, so carefully planned in their symmetry and order, now feel like something beyond Earth. The buildings, glowing softly, resemble temples of a civilization not yet born. The water, catching every glimmer, appears almost enchanted. The air itself seems different, warmer, fuller, vibrating faintly with the energy coursing unseen through wires and filaments. For those wandering the White City, the night becomes a revelation. They will remember not only what they saw, but how they felt in its glow, small and yet connected to something vast, humbled yet uplifted, as though progress itself had taken visible form. The electric tower stands as more than a marvel of engineering. It is a symbol, a promise that the world is changing, that the future may indeed be brighter, literally brighter, than the past. And so the evening deepens, but darkness never truly comes. The lamps burn steadily, the tower glows without falter, and the White City itself seems to hover between reality and dream. The crowd thins gradually as families drift away, as boats return to their docks, as footsteps echo along the promenades. Yet the glow remains, constant, unwavering, casting its reflection across the lagoon and across the memory of all who beheld it. In the quiet that follows, one might sit upon a bench by the water and watch the tower's light shimmer against the ripples. The engines that feed it continue their hidden labor, but their sound does not intrude. Instead, there is only the steady presence of illumination, a calm radiance that softens thought and blurs time. The tower does not shout its triumph, it hums it, steadily, endlessly, until the night itself seems to rest within its glow. Beyond the shimmer of lamps upon the lagoon, the evening finds a gentler rhythm. The crowds that had gathered beneath the great tower disperse slowly, drifting along curving paths as though carried by an unseen current. Voices quiet with the hush of the hour, and the white city, though glowing brightly, seems to invite reflection rather than clamor. From the distance, music carries faintly, an orchestra finishing a set, a brass band lifting its notes into the night. But here, by the water, the sound is softened, a distant thread woven into the fabric of calm. It is in this softened atmosphere that the Palace of Fine Arts appears. Even among the grand structures of the fair, it commands a particular presence. Its great façade rises with solemn dignity, less adorned than some of its neighbors, yet all the more powerful for its restraint. A series of stately columns holds its entrance in solemn order, and broad steps lead upward as though inviting one into a sanctuary. Unlike Machinery Hall, with its restless clatter, or the pavilions of commerce crowded with noise, this building feels still from the moment it comes into view. The lamps trace its outlines gently, casting pale radiance across stone that seems heavier, more permanent than the plaster and wood used elsewhere. For here, the intention is different. Where so much of the fair is designed to dazzle for a season and then vanish, the Palace of Fine Arts is built to endure. It stands not only as a part of the fair, but as a promise of memory, a vessel for treasures gathered from far corners of the world. Approaching it feels less like stepping toward exhibition than like entering a temple of time itself. The crowd thins upon the steps. Many visitors prefer the spectacle of lights and music outside, but those who climb upward do so with quiet purpose. The great doors swing open and one steps inside. At once, the sounds of the fair diminish, falling away as though a curtain has been drawn. The air is cooler here, hushed, carrying with it the faint scent of varnish and wood, and beneath it, something older still, the aura that seems always to cling to works of art, as though they hold within them the silence of centuries. The first hall stretches wide, its ceiling high, its walls adorned with paintings that seem to glow softly in the lamplight. Rows of canvases line the galleries, some vast in scale, depicting battles or mythologies, others small and intimate, showing quiet corners of daily life. Visitors move slowly between them, their footsteps muffled by carpet, their voices hushed almost instinctively. In this place, the pace of the fair alters. Time, which outside seemed to rush forward with engines and innovations, now slows, stretches, allows itself to linger. One painting shows a storm at sea, waves towering, sky torn by lightning. Another captures a mother bending over a child, her face softened with tenderness. A third presents a scene from antiquity, marble columns and distant hills rendered in careful strokes. The range is vast, lands and stories gathered across continents, centuries condensed into frames of wood and canvas. For the visitor, the effect is not simply visual but emotional, a sense of walking not merely through a building, but through time, through memory, through imagination itself. Moving deeper, sculpture begins to appear. Figures in marble and bronze stand in alcoves, their forms at once solid and delicate, each curve and gesture preserved by the hands of unseen artists. Some stand with classical dignity, draped in robes, faces calm and remote. Others are more immediate, children at play, A figure in the act of motion, a horse poised with muscles taut. The play of light across their surfaces is subtle, shadows deepening their presence, giving them an uncanny vitality as though they might stir at any moment from their stillness. The air inside the palace is different. Outside, light dazzles and crowds press. Here, the stillness feels almost like a cathedral. Visitors whisper not from rule, but from instinct, sensing that the space itself demands reverence. Even the faint sound of footsteps seems softened, absorbed by the vast rooms. In this silence, the art speaks more clearly. One can pause before a painting for minutes without moving, letting its colors, its forms, its suggestion of distant places sink into thought. And the variety is staggering. Works arrive not only from American artists, but from Europe, from Asia, from lands most visitors will never see with their own eyes. Here, a Dutch landscape spreads beneath a wide sky, fields stretching endlessly, windmills turning slowly in the breeze. There, an Italian master's brush captures a Madonna, her gaze serene, her hands folded in gentle prayer. In another gallery, Japanese prints hang in rows, their delicate lines and flowing colors unlike anything familiar to Western eyes, yet holding a quiet power that lingers long after one has passed. Deeper still, the galleries expand into themed collections. One hall is devoted to the Renaissance, canvases luminous with saints and scholars, faces painted with that blend of realism and divinity that defined the era. Another focuses on the modern, bold strokes and colors, daring in their freshness, unsettling to some, exhilarating to others. Visitors murmur opinions softly, some shaking their heads at what they see as excess, others leaning forward as though hungry for more. In this way, the palace becomes not only a display, but a conversation across generations, styles, and visions. The sculpture courts invite wandering. Fountains gurgle quietly in their centers, their waters catching light and scattering it in shifting patterns upon stone. Statues surround them, some monumental, others delicate, forming a silent company of forms that seem almost alive. To walk among them is to feel both the weight of centuries and the presence of something eternal. The human desire to shape matter into meaning, to make permanence from fleeting thought. The deeper one goes, the more the sense of time alters. The fair outside is bound to 1893, its machines and pavilions rooted in the present moment. But here, within the Palace of Fine Arts, time stretches outward in both directions, backward into the ancient past, forward into futures not yet imagined. The paintings and sculptures whisper of civilizations long vanished, of beliefs carried across centuries, of lives lived and lost yet preserved in form and color. They remind the visitor that invention is only part of progress. That beauty, too, shapes the human journey. As the evening deepens, the galleries grow quieter still. Lamps burn steadily, casting gentle pools of light, but the crowd thins as many depart for the entertainments outside. Those who remain move slowly, almost dreamlike, their faces softened by contemplation. A child leans drowsily against her father's arm, her gaze half-focused upon a marble figure. A pair of students sketch quickly in notebooks, their lines hurried yet intent. An older man stands before a canvas and does not move for what feels like an hour, his thoughts wandering who knows where. Through high windows, glimpses of the outside can be seen. The electric tower still glows in the distance, its reflection shimmering upon the lagoon. Yet from within the palace, it seems part of another world, one of brilliance and display. Here, the emphasis is not upon light alone, but upon the enduring forms of art. The contrast deepens the experience. Outside, a city of temporary wonder. Inside, a hall of lasting treasures. Eventually, the galleries begin to close. Attendants move quietly through the halls, guiding visitors gently toward the exits. Yet even in departure, the sense of stillness lingers. Stepping once more into the night, one carries with them the calm of the palace, as though its silence has impressed itself upon the mind. The glow of lamps greets the eyes once more, The murmur of crowds returns, yet beneath it all, the memory of quiet galleries remains, steady and unshaken. The Palace of Fine Arts does not overwhelm in the way of Machinery Hall or the Electric Tower. It does not roar or blaze. Instead, it leaves a quieter mark, one that seeps into thought and lingers long after the day is done. For in its halls, the visitor finds not only works of beauty, but a reminder of what endures when exhibitions end and pavilions fall. The human impulse to create, to preserve, to seek meaning in form and colour, in line and stone. And so, stepping down its broad steps once more, the night feels different. The fair remains vibrant, its music rising, its lamps glowing, its crowds moving restlessly through the avenues. Yet, within the memory of the palace lies a stillness that steadies the step, that softens the heart, that makes the night seem less hurried. The lagoon glimmers once again in view, the reflections shimmering, leading onward to whatever paths remain unseen. Emerging once more into the night, the glow of the lagoon meets the eyes with its shifting reflections, yet the mind still carries the hush of the galleries. The white city does not pause, however. It seems always to beckon forward, always to unfold some new vista just beyond the next avenue. Lanterns sway faintly in the evening air, and the footsteps of the crowd move with quiet insistence along paths that seem to lead outward towards something broader still. The air itself carries hints of change. Scents unfamiliar mingle on the breeze, spices drifting from food stalls, the sweet smoke of incense, the earthy aroma of materials shaped into crafts. The soundscape shifts as well, a flute with tones unlike those of Western music, the steady beat of a drum carried across the plaza, voices layered in accents from distant lands. These traces gather gradually, until they converge upon a district of the fair set aside for the nations of the world. Here, the architecture transforms. Where the grand halls of agriculture and machinery spoke in the classical language of columns and domes, the pavilions of distant nations bear the forms of their own traditions. Each rises with a distinctive character, as though small fragments of the earth had been transplanted and set carefully side by side upon the grounds of Chicago. To wander here is to step not into one building, but into a dozen countries, each speaking in its own voice, each opening a small window onto lives lived far beyond the horizon. The Japanese pavilion rests quietly beside a grove of trees, its wooden beams dark against the glow of lamps, its roof curved in gentle arcs. Inside, the air carries the faint fragrance of cedar. Delicate screens divide the rooms, their surfaces painted with blossoms and birds, scenes of spring and autumn rendered with the lightest of hands. Visitors remove their shoes as they step inside, and the hush of the place seems to deepen the longer one lingers. Ceramics are displayed in orderly rows, bowls and cups, whose glazes capture the subtleties of mist and water, mountains and clouds. A small garden lies beyond, stones arranged with care, a trickling stream flowing softly beneath a wooden bridge. It feels less like an exhibit than a fragment of another world, transplanted whole into the fair, carrying with it a stillness that contrasts with the noise of invention outside. Not far away rises the Pavilion of China, adorned with dragons and red lacquer, its form unmistakably different from its neighbours. Lanterns swing gently at its entrance, casting a warm glow upon carved wood and painted panels. Inside, silk hangs in brilliant colours, crimson, gold, deep green, woven with patterns that shimmer as the light touches them. Porcelain vases stand tall, their surfaces alive with blue and white figures. Landscapes where mountains rise above winding rivers. Calligraphy scrolls line the walls, their characters flowing with elegance and precision. To many visitors, the sight is bewildering, even exotic. To others, it stirs a sense of wonder at the breadth of human creation. The air hums faintly with the sound of a stringed instrument, its notes bending gently, unfamiliar yet soothing in their repetition. Across the avenue, the German pavilion stands with solid strength, its structure recalling the heavy, timbered forms of traditional houses. Inside, craftsmanship is on display. Carved woodwork, intricate clocks, whose gears move with precise harmony, glassware that gleams under lamplight. The atmosphere is robust, practical, and proud, a statement of a nation asserting its industry as much as its culture. Yet even here, there is art. Paintings of forested hills and villages, music performed by a small ensemble whose brass instruments send clear notes into the evening air. The French pavilion, by contrast, emphasizes elegance. Its entrance rises with ornate detail, and within, one finds fabrics, perfumes, and fashions, all carefully arranged to display refinement. Paintings line the walls, many modern in their brushwork, carrying whispers of Parisian studios. Jewelry gleams beneath glass, delicate and precise. Even the arrangement of flowers in vases seems deliberate, a reminder that beauty itself is a form of national expression. Visitors linger here, murmuring softly, drawn not by the novelty of the unfamiliar, but by the allure of sophistication. In another corner stands the Pavilion of Egypt, its entrance guarded by columns carved with hieroglyphs, its walls painted in colors recalling the tombs of antiquity. Inside, statues of gods and pharaohs rise in solemn dignity. Cases display artifacts, amulets, fragments of stone, replicas of treasures that lie buried in the sands along the Nile. Lamps cast a golden light, deepening the sense of mystery. For many, Egypt is less a nation than a dream, a land of pyramids and deserts imagined from books and tales. Here, that dream takes form, however partial, drawing visitors into its aura of ancient time. Other nations, too, stake their place. Spain displays tapestries rich in color, scenes of kings and courts woven with care. Italy presents sculpture and painting, reminders of Renaissance glory, yet also glassware from Venice, shimmering with delicate hues. Scandinavian countries show woodwork and textiles, sturdy yet graceful in design. From South America come displays of silver and gold, intricate patterns shaped by hand, objects that carry with them the warmth of equatorial lands. Each pavilion, though limited in size, speaks volumes, its arrangement a declaration. This is who we are, this is what we bring, this is how we wish to be remembered. To wander among them is to sense the world gathered in a single place. The distances that normally separate continents and cultures seem to dissolve beneath the lamps of the fair. Within a few steps, one may pass from Asia to Europe, from Africa to the Americas. Yet the experience is not chaotic. It is rather like walking through a great conversation, voices distinct, yet part of a single chorus. The visitors respond in varied ways. Some move quickly, eager to glimpse as much as possible, their eyes wide, their expressions caught between curiosity and fatigue. Others linger, pausing before a vase, a painting, a piece of fabric, as though trying to carry its presence into memory. Children peer at statues with wonder, their small hands pressing against glass cases. Scholars make notes, sketching outlines, recording details for study. Farmers from distant towns stare at silks and carvings with awe. Their world suddenly widened. For each, the encounter is different, yet for all, it is a passage beyond the boundaries of the familiar. The evening air deepens as one moves among the pavilions. Lamps glow steadily, casting long shadows, while the scents of food drift more strongly now. Cooked meats, spiced stews, sweet pastries, offered by stalls that cluster near the avenues. Here too, the nations present their flavors, inviting visitors not only to see but to taste. A sip of tea from China, a morsel of bread from Germany, a sweet confection from France. Each becomes a small fragment of experience, a memory not easily erased. The Pavilion District is not as crowded as the Court of Honor or the Midway, yet it holds its own kind of magnetism. For here lies not the roar of machines, nor the blaze of electric lamps, but the quiet presence of cultures brought together, each carrying the weight of centuries, each offering a glimpse of something far beyond the reach of most lives. To linger among them is to feel at once small and expanded, as though the mind itself has stretched to encompass a broader horizon. And in this expansion lies a kind of peace. For though the nations stand side by side, each distinct, each proud, here they coexist without conflict. Their arts, their crafts, their traditions are displayed not as weapons, but as gifts, meant to be admired, perhaps envied, but above all shared. The visitor, wandering slowly among them, senses this harmony, however fleeting, and carries it as a quiet reassurance that the world, vast and varied as it is, can be gathered into a single place and allowed to shine in its diversity. As the night deepens, the music softens, the lights glow steadily, and the pavilions settle into a kind of dreamlike calm. The fair, so vast and restless, feels gentler here. One might pause upon a bench, watching visitors move from one entrance to another, hearing fragments of languages carried on the air, breathing in scents that seem at once strange and familiar. The moment stretches, unhurried, timeless, as though the world itself has chosen to rest together beneath the lamps. The path bends westward, drawing the stream of visitors away from the formal courts and glowing pavilions into a space that stretches long and straight, nearly a mile in length. The Midway Plaisance lies here, a broad avenue transformed into a stage for the world's amusements. Where the pavilions of nations whispered their dignity, the Midway hums with a different energy, lighter, more playful, yet no less a reflection of the vastness of the world gathered in Chicago. Even from a distance, sound rises in layered currents. The music of brass bands collides with the strumming of unfamiliar instruments, mingling with laughter, shouts, and the rhythmic beat of dancers' feet upon wooden platforms. Lights shimmer in bright colors, outlining tents and façades that promise entertainment within. The scent of food drifts more heavily here. Grilled meats, sweet confections, spices fried in oils, mixing with the sharp tang of sawdust scattered along the walkways. The Midway is less refined, perhaps, but it carries a magnetism that pulls the weary visitor forward. At the center of the Midway stands its most commanding presence, the great Ferris Wheel. Its silhouette towers above the fairgrounds, a circle of steel that rises more than 200 feet into the night sky. Each car is large enough to hold dozens of passengers, its windows glowing faintly as it ascends. The wheel turns with a steady grace, its vast machinery hidden beneath a calm exterior. From below, one sees figures leaning at the windows, gazing outward across the white city, their outlines illuminated against the glow of the fair. For many, this ride is as astonishing as the electric tower itself, a demonstration not of light, but of height, of the power to lift the human body into the air and grant it a view once reserved for birds. Crowds gather to watch the wheel turn, some daring to ride, others content to marvel from below. The creak of its rotation blends with the voices of those waiting in line, a mixture of excitement and nervous laughter. For those who ascend, the movement is slow but transformative. As the car rises, the sounds of the Midway fade, replaced by a widening silence, broken only by the groan of steel and the faint rush of wind. From the top, the city lies spread in miniature. The glowing avenues, the domes of the palaces, the dark line of the lake stretching beyond. It is a view no visitor forgets, one that etches itself into memory as a vision of a new age of invention. Beneath the shadow of the wheel, the Midway continues in both directions, lined with exhibits that blend entertainment with a sense of the world's variety. To step into this avenue is to wander into a collage of cultures and amusements, arranged side by side in curious succession. One finds a village of Dahomey, its huts built of wood and straw, fires burning in pits, men and women clothed in traditional garments. Performances of dance and music draw clusters of spectators, their movements powerful and rhythmic, their voices carrying into the night air. To many visitors, the scene seems strange, even unsettling, yet it holds them nonetheless, an encounter with lives imagined only dimly before. Not far away lies the Turkish village, with domed roofs and tiled walls, its entrance flanked by merchants who display carpets, brass lamps, and hookahs for sale. Within, the air is scented with coffee and tobacco. Music drifts from a tent, the notes of the oud and the beat of the drum mingling with the laughter of dancers whose veils shimmer under the lamplight. Crowds gather at the doorways, some stepping inside to sip thick, sweet coffee from small cups, others watching from outside with curiosity. Across the avenue rises the Moorish palace, its arches carved with intricate detail, its interior a maze of mirrored rooms and stained glass that scatters light into dazzling colours. Visitors wander slowly through its chambers, their reflections multiplying around them, their steps echoing faintly in the vast halls. For some, it is amusement. For others, a kind of dream, a glimpse of grandeur far removed from their daily lives. The Midway is not limited to representations of distant lands. There are spectacles designed purely for entertainment, shooting galleries, mechanical rides, small theatres where performers sing, act, or display feats of skill. A man breathes fire before a cheering crowd. Acrobats balance on narrow ropes, their forms suspended high above. Trained animals perform tricks to the delight of children. The sounds of applause ripple through the air, joining the music and laughter into a restless chorus. Yet amid this carnival atmosphere, the Midway still holds a deeper undercurrent. For woven through the amusements are attempts to show the breadth of human life, to gather not only nations, but ways of being into one place. A model of a German village sits beside a replica of an Eskimo encampment. An Irish cottage, complete with turf roof, rests not far from a street of Cairo recreated in miniature. Each offers a glimpse, however stylized, into lives lived far beyond Chicago, giving visitors the sense that the fair is not merely American, nor even European, but global in scope. The avenue is alive with people of every kind. Men in top hats stroll beside farmers in plain coats, their wives in bonnets or elaborate dresses, children tugging at their hands. The wealthy linger in cafes, sipping drinks, while labourers marvel at sights they had never imagined. The Midway is the most democratic of spaces at the fair. Here, distinctions blur amid the press of bodies, the shared amazement at what lies before the eyes. The hours pass almost unnoticed in such a place. The Ferris wheel turns steadily, its lamps glowing. The music rises and falls in waves. The scents of food remain heavy on the air. As night deepens, the Midway does not diminish but grows more vibrant, its lights reflected in the eyes of the crowd, its energy sustained by novelty and curiosity. Where the Court of Honour embodies calm majesty, the Midway thrives on constant motion, a river of sights and sounds flowing endlessly along its mile-long course. For the tired visitor, however, the Midway also offers moments of rest. Benches line the avenue, shaded by awnings or placed beside small gardens where lanterns cast gentle light upon flowers. To sit here is to watch the world pass in miniature. Figures moving in and out of tents, the wheel rising and falling against the sky, the hum of voices forming a steady background to the night. The pause is temporary, but it allows the senses to absorb what they have seen, to settle before wandering onward once more. And as the gaze lingers, a realization emerges. The Midway is not merely an amusement, nor only a spectacle of difference. It is a mirror of the fair itself, a microcosm of the world's diversity, its entertainments and cultures arranged side by side, neither fully understood nor easily forgotten. It reflects both the curiosity and the restlessness of an age determined to gather everything under its gaze, to display, to measure, to marvel. The longer one remains, the more the Midway takes on a dreamlike quality. The sounds blur into a steady hum, the lights into a shimmering haze. The laughter of children echoes faintly. The music drifts like a breeze. The wheel turns with unhurried rhythm. Time seems to loosen its grip, and the visitor becomes less a spectator than a presence carried along by the current of the avenue. In the stillness of the pause, the Midway reveals itself not only as spectacle but as passage. It leads the mind outward, beyond the fairgrounds, toward the idea of a world vast and interconnected, filled with lives as rich and strange as those glimpsed here in fragment. And as the lamps glow steadily, as the crowd moves onward, the sense remains. This place, for all its noise and novelty, is also a kind of threshold, a reminder that the horizon of experience is always wider than one imagines. The night continues, the midway alive with its restless music, yet within the pause there is calm. The visitor rises again, ready to follow the current onward, deeper into the white city's unfolding dream. Beyond the open air of the midway, where laughter rises with the glow of lanterns and the slow turning of the great wheel, another kind of sound begins to press upon the ears. Tones unfamiliar, drifting, insistent. They do not belong to brass bands or marching drums, nor to the sentimental songs echoing from small theatres. These are tones drawn from instruments shaped in distant lands, vibrating in ways the American ear has rarely known. They float over the heads of the crowd, sometimes sharp, sometimes mournful, sometimes rising in rhythms that resist the regularity of Western time. The fairgoer follows them almost without deciding to, drawn toward the pavilions where the music of other worlds is being performed. The buildings stand with their own kind of presence, wooden façades painted with foreign lettering, domes and arches that echo distant cities, simple stages draped with fabrics patterned in strange colours. Here, the fair becomes not only a place of invention and spectacle, but also a gathering of voices, melodies carried across oceans, now set loose into the Chicago air. The first notes that reach the ear come from the Javanese gamelan. Beneath a long roof, supported by carved beams, musicians sit cross-legged before instruments unlike anything seen in the orchestras of the West. Rows of bronze gongs gleam under the lamps, their surfaces beaten smooth by years of use. Metallophones with keys of brass are struck with padded mallets, producing tones that shimmer and overlap. A great gong hangs at the back, struck only at the end of long cycles, marking time not in the quick beats of a march, but in broad, measured breaths. The sound does not rush forward, but circles gently, each note melting into the next, like ripples spreading across still water. Visitors gather silently, at first unsettled by the unfamiliarity of the music, then gradually lulled into its rhythm. The gamelan moves not in straight lines, but in patterns that fold back upon themselves. It carries no sense of urgency, no need to resolve into a final cadence. Instead, it drifts endlessly, a soundscape of shimmering bronze that seems to expand the very air of the midway into another dimension. To hear it in this setting, surrounded by the restless noise of the fair, is to feel the world widen suddenly, to recognize that harmony may take forms far removed from the ordered progressions of Western song. Close by, another current of sound emerges, the sharp, nasal cry of the reed flute, the insistent beat of hand drums, the plucked strings of the oud. From the Turkish village comes music of a very different kind. The rhythms are intricate, darting and circling, marked by sudden accents and improvisations. Singers add their voices, bending notes upward into long wails that rise above the steady beat of the darbuka. The music is not written upon sheets, but carried in memory, passed through generations. Each performance a living moment rather than a repetition. The crowd presses near the stage where dancers move in time with the music, their arms weaving patterns, their steps light upon the wooden floor. Some visitors clap awkwardly along, unable to match the shifting rhythm. Others simply watch, transfixed. For many, the sound is almost disorienting, the scales unlike anything taught in American music halls. Yet it carries its own coherence, its own sense of balance, as though the very irregularities conceal an order not yet grasped. A short walk farther, and another sound intrudes. The high, piercing cry of a zurna from the North African performers, its reedy voice cutting through the air like a blade. Drums thunder beneath it, their rolling beats echoing like distant thunder. The music is urgent, propulsive, stirring something in the body that resists stillness. To stand before it is to feel the ground vibrate faintly beneath the feet, to sense that music is not merely heard, but lived within the bones. The fair offers not only instruments, but voices, and from one pavilion a chorus rises, steady and deep. It is the sound of singers from the Russian exhibit, their voices layered in rich harmonies, each note dark and resonant. They sing not in showmanship, but in solemn unison, the power of the sound filling the small chamber and spilling outward. The words are unintelligible to most of the audience, but the weight of them is felt nonetheless. It is a sound of depth, of centuries carried in the lungs of men and women who shape it with reverence. To move among these performances is to wander through a kind of map drawn not in geography, but in sound. Each stop along the midway presents a different world, each melody an opening into a culture defined as much by rhythm as by architecture, as much by song as by speech. The visitor does not merely watch, but absorbs. The ears filled with fragments of music that refuse to align neatly, a mosaic of tones that remain vivid long after they fade. Children dart between the exhibits, chasing the echoes of drums and flutes. Couples linger, hands linked, listening to music that neither understands, but both find strangely compelling. Elderly men stroke their mustaches, nodding slowly as if weighing the merit of what they hear against the traditions they know. For some, the sounds stir admiration. For others, skepticism. Yet even those who leave shaking their heads cannot shake entirely the resonance that lingers in the chest, the recognition that music itself is larger than they once imagined. The food of the midway intertwines with its music, each scent a counterpoint to the tones that drift through the night. The sweetness of candied nuts mingles with the savory aroma of roasted lamb, the bitterness of thick coffee with the spice of fried dough. To sit at a small table, sipping from a cup while music swells nearby, is to feel transported, not fully into another land, but into a meeting place between here and there, Chicago and the distant world. As the hours lengthen, the midway does not grow silent. Musicians continue to play, some repeating patterns that last far into the night, others shifting as new performers step forward. The gamelan shimmers steadily, its cycles unfolding like the slow turning of constellations. Turkish musicians improvise upon familiar melodies, weaving variations that twist like smoke. African drummers beat out rhythms that seem inexhaustible, each phrase leading seamlessly into the next. The result is a soundscape without ending, a music that seems to suspend time itself. For the listener who lingers, the effect becomes hypnotic. The mind ceases to seek resolution, to wait for the conclusion of a song. Instead, it rests within the flow, as if floating on a current. The strange music of the foreign exhibits no longer seems foreign at all, but simply another shape of the human desire to create pattern out of sound, to give voice to something beyond words. And so, as the lamps burn low and the Ferris wheel continues its patient rotation in the distance, the visitor finds themselves still listening, still drawn forward by melodies that resist explanation. The fair has offered inventions, spectacles, grand architecture, yet in these small pavilions, it offers something subtler, more enduring, a reminder that the world is not one rhythm but many, not one harmony but a multitude, each carrying its own truth. The night deepens, the music drifts into the air, and the listener walks slowly onward, the echoes of those sounds following like shadows. Strange, haunting, and unforgettable. The avenue narrows, and the sound of drums and flutes fades behind, swallowed by the open air of the fairgrounds once again. The crowd thins here, as if the restless energy of the midway has given way to something calmer, more measured. Lamps begin to flicker along the pathways, their glass globes glowing softly against the gathering dusk. Above them, the sky deepens, the last traces of daylight dissolving into a band of pale violet, then into the indigo of night. The visitor drifts toward the lagoons, where the fair's heart seems to slow into quieter rhythms. The air cools, carrying the scent of damp earth and faint traces of flowers planted along the terraces. Water reflects the evening light with a stillness broken only by the gentle strokes of oars from small boats that glide across the surface. Each dip of the paddle leaves a widening circle of ripples, soft enough to vanish almost as soon as they appear. Here, the White City is not loud with invention or spectacle, but hushed, as though it too has paused to breathe. The outlines of great buildings are mirrored upon the water, the domes, the columns, the long arcades lit with scattered lanterns. The reflections tremble with each movement of the surface, giving the impression that the structures themselves are swaying gently, caught between solidity and dream. Along the edges of the lagoon, couples stroll slowly, their voices lowered, their footsteps light upon the gravel paths. Families sit upon benches, children leaning drowsily against their parents, their eyes heavy with the day's impressions. The restless motion of the fair seems to have ebbed into this quiet corner, leaving behind a space that invites rest rather than excitement. A gondola passes, its prow curved upward, its body painted dark against the shimmering water. The gondolier stands tall, his pole dipping rhythmically, guiding the vessel with practiced ease. The passengers recline in silence, content to let the scene carry them. The gondola seems almost to float without effort, its reflection gliding alongside, as if shadow and substance were one. For a moment, the fair itself feels transported, the Midwestern city fading into a Venice imagined in light and water. The lamps along the promenade grow brighter as the sky darkens. Their glow is gentle, not harsh, casting halos upon the paths, outlining the silhouettes of trees and statues. The play of light and shadow deepens the stillness, turning the lagoon into a mirror of stars before the stars themselves emerge. The atmosphere is neither wholly real nor entirely illusion, but something suspended between the two, a dreamscape in which time seems to hesitate, unwilling to move forward too quickly. A breeze drifts across the surface, carrying with it the faint rustle of leaves and the quiet clink of rigging from distant boats moored at the edge of the grounds. The sound is slight, easily missed, yet it adds to the impression that the world has softened into a gentler register. No announcement is made, no ceremony unfolds. The transformation from day to night is unhurried, natural, and all the more profound for its simplicity. On the terrace steps that descend toward the water, groups of visitors sit in clusters, their faces illuminated by the lamps above. Some share quiet conversation, others watch the passing gondolas or the shifting play of reflections upon the surface. The voices carry only faintly, blending into the wider hush, a background murmur more than a disturbance. The court of honor lies nearby, its grand colonnades and domes rising with silent majesty. From this vantage, it appears less a sight of triumph than a kind of stage set for serenity. The water before it serves as a vast pool of reflection, doubling its presence, making the White City seem larger, almost infinite. The symmetry of the buildings, the measured rhythm of their forms, is magnified in the water until the eye begins to lose its sense of where reality ends and reflection begins. It is here, in these evening shadows, that the White City shows its most elusive face. By day, it dazzles with clarity, the brilliance of whitewashed façades, the bustle of movement, the sharp lines of architecture. But by night, softened by water and lamplight, it becomes less a city and more a vision. The boundaries blur, and what was once firmly constructed appears to hover, fragile and fleeting, like a memory already half vanished. From the far side of the lagoon, faint strains of music reach the ear again, but now softened, distant. A band plays beneath a pavilion, its notes drifting across the water, thinned by distance until they become almost indistinguishable from the sound of the breeze. The music does not command attention, but offers itself as accompaniment, a gentle weaving of sound into the quiet fabric of night. As the eye lingers upon the water, small lanterns can be seen drifting across its surface. Some are placed in boats, others float alone, carried by the current. Their light wavers, bending and reforming with each movement, creating constellations that shimmer, vanish, and reappear. The scene recalls ancient festivals, where light upon water was a symbol of passage, of remembrance, of the desire to hold back darkness. Here, it seems simply a gesture of beauty, offered without demand, received without expectation. Visitors speak of the lagoons as the soul of the fair, and in the evening it is easy to understand why. The mechanical marvels, the pavilions of nations, the midway's amusements, all of them rest in contrast to this stillness, this mirror of water that gathers the day's impressions and quiets them. One feels, sitting upon a bench or leaning upon a balustrade, that the fair was not built only to impress, but also to soothe, to remind the visitor that progress need not always roar, but may also whisper. A young boy tosses a pebble into the water, and the circles spread outward, distorting the reflections of the colonnades for a brief moment. The ripples fade quickly, and the symmetry restores itself, as if nothing had happened. The boy's laughter echoes, then diminishes, folded back into the general hush. The lagoon does not hold disturbances for long. It returns always to stillness, as though it has no memory of interruption. The air cools further as night deepens. Some visitors draw shawls closer around their shoulders. Others quicken their steps toward the warmer spaces. Yet many remain, unwilling to leave the spell of the water, content to watch as the lamps continue their soft vigil. The city around them, beyond the boundaries of the fair, lies restless with industry, with noise and motion. But here, by the lagoon, another rhythm prevails, slower, quieter, attuned to the measured passage of shadows. In time, stars emerge above, faint at first, then clearer as the sky darkens fully. They scatter themselves across the heavens, reflected faintly upon the water below. Between the lamps, the reflections of the stars tremble, a mingling of natural light and human artifice, each answering the other. To look upon them is to feel suspended, caught between earth and sky, between the solidity of the fair and the vastness beyond it. The visitor lingers, breathing the cool air, watching the slow drift of boats and the gentle flicker of lanterns upon the surface. The white city, for all its grandeur and invention, seems at its most complete here, not in motion or in spectacle, but in repose. The lagoon gathers it all, the buildings, the lights, the voices, the music, and transforms them into reflection, a vision that cannot be held, but only experienced in the moment. And so the evening shadows lengthen, the water deepens in colour, and the fair settles into its nocturne. Those who remain by the lagoon carry within them not only the memory of what they have seen, but also the calm assurance that beauty resides as much in stillness as in progress, as much in reflection as in construction. The white city glows around them, yet the true radiance lies here, upon the water, in the quiet communion of shadow and light. The lagoon lies hushed, its rippling reflections holding the last violet of the sky, when the first true bloom of light appears. At the edge of the court of honor, a single lamp hums awake, its glass globe glowing faintly at first, then steady, like a star pulling itself into being. A moment later, another follows, then another. Soon, in quiet succession, the rows of lamps along the colonnades shimmer into brightness, one after the other, until the entire length of the promenade is lined with radiance. The white city does not turn its lights on suddenly. It seems instead to unfold them like a flower, opening petal by petal. The transformation is slow, deliberate, a deep breath drawn by stone and water alike. Shadows retreat in measured steps, giving way to warm halos that spread across the terraces and into the water, where moments before the outlines of columns and domes were only hints against the dark. They now glow as though sketched in firelight. Visitors pause along the paths to watch, some holding still as if afraid that moving might disturb the spell. Conversations taper off, replaced by the soft hum of awe. For many, it is the first time they have seen a city lit by electricity in such a scale. Gaslight, familiar and flickering, belongs to their streets at home, but here the light is steady, brilliant, and without smoke. It does not waver with the wind, but holds firm, as though it has mastered the air itself. The effect is not harsh. The architects and engineers have arranged it so that the light falls gently, spreading evenly, avoiding glare. The vast façades of plaster and staff, bright white by day, now gleam with a new kind of softness, almost translucent, as if illuminated from within. Shadows deepen in their recesses, but the surfaces glow, giving the impression that the buildings are less made of stone than of light condensed into form. Across the lagoon, reflections double the spectacle. Every lamp, every arc of brightness, is caught and carried upon the surface of the water. The colonnades appear both above and below, their lines repeated until they seem endless. Boats gliding across the lagoon pass through a dreamlike space, suspended between two illuminated cities. One real, one inverted. Each dip of the oar scatters the reflection, but the water gathers it back almost immediately, repairing the illusion as though it cannot bear to let it go. A hush settles, deeper even than before. It is not silence, for the fair is still alive with people, but a softened soundscape. Voices lowered, footsteps muted by gravel, the faint lapping of water against stone. The crowd seems unwilling to speak too loudly, as though entering a place of reverence. The lights do not dazzle in the way of fireworks or sudden display. Instead, they invite quiet wonder, a slower kind of astonishment that grows the longer one gazes. From the domed administration building, light spills outward through arched windows, each pane shining like a jewel. The fisheries building glimmers across the water, its curved roofline outlined by rows of lamps. The manufactures and liberal arts building, vast even in darkness, now radiates with countless points of illumination, its size made more incomprehensible by the glow that defines its edges. Together, they seem less like structures placed upon the earth than constellations fixed in careful order, cities of the heavens translated to stone and plaster. At intervals, the outlines of fountains stir. Streams of water, invisible in the fading dusk, suddenly shimmer with liquid fire as the lights catch them. Droplets scatter like shards of glass, tumbling down to the basins below with a sound too delicate to break the stillness. Around them, the gathered visitors lean forward, watching the way light clings to every curve of water, as if the fountains themselves had become sculpted from brightness alone. The air has cooled further, and the glow of the lamps lends warmth where the evening might otherwise chill. Families linger upon the benches, their faces softly lit, their expressions unreadable in detail, but calm in outline. Couples walk slowly along the balustrades, their shadows long and stretching toward the water. The fair is still crowded, but the pace has shifted. The hurried rush of daytime exhibitions has dissolved. What remains is wandering, watching, a drifting in which the destination matters less than the act of moving through light itself. In the distance, a band begins to play. The music is gentler now, slower in tempo, as though chosen to harmonize with the unfolding of night. The notes float easily through the air, blending with the shimmer of the lamps. Listeners pause as they pass, some gathering near the pavilion, others content to let the sound reach them faintly as they stroll. The melodies seem less like performance than accompaniment, as though the fair itself were providing its own soundtrack for the scene. The greatest wonder lies ahead, in the heart of the Court of Honor. Here, the electric lamps are most numerous, strung in long lines, set into niches, positioned at every corner where light might emphasize form. As the onlookers approach, the effect deepens. The court becomes a vast chamber of radiance, open to the night sky, yet enclosed by its luminous walls. Each building stands like a torch, steady and unwavering, their combined glow gathering into something more powerful than the sum of its parts. The lagoon at the court's center amplifies it further. Reflections dance across its surface, bending, stretching, breaking into fragments, then reforming. To stand at its edge is to feel surrounded, immersed, almost swallowed by light. Visitors lean upon the stone balustrades and watch, some in silence, some whispering quietly, others simply gazing without words. The sight asks for nothing more than attention, and it rewards that attention with a sense of vastness, of being part of something both human-made and beyond human scale. The first sparks of the great fountains ignite. Jets of water leap into the air, catching beams from carefully placed arc lamps, transforming streams into luminous columns. Droplets scatter like diamonds, falling back in a mist that glows against the dark. Children gasp, their hands gripping the railings. Adults simply watch, motionless. The fountains were designed for such moments. Not only feats of engineering, but spectacles of transformation where water and light become indistinguishable. As the hours stretch, more lamps are lit along the midway, spreading the bloom outward. From afar, the glow appears as a band of brightness stretching across the landscape, an artificial dawn that does not fade but grows stronger. The Ferris Wheel, its structure outlined with rows of lights, turns slowly against the night sky. Each car rises and falls like a lantern, carrying its passengers upward into a view where the entire white city lies spread beneath them, glowing as if carved from moonlight. The scene holds a paradox. It is utterly new. Electric light in such abundance is a marvel of modernity, but it also feels timeless. The reflections upon water, the rhythm of footsteps along paths, the gathering of people beneath a starless glow, these could belong to any age of wonder. What sets this apart is not only the technology, but the way it has been shaped to create atmosphere, to soften the hardness of progress into the gentleness of dream. Hours pass unnoticed. The night is neither loud nor hurried, but drifts onward with the measured pace of the lights themselves. Lamps continue to burn steadily, without flicker, without smoke. The fair has taken on its nocturnal identity, as complete as the one it wore in daylight. Where the sun had shown its grandeur, the lamps now reveal its mystery. The white city is not merely illuminated, it has become illumination. The visitor, standing at the water's edge, senses the difference most clearly in the quiet intervals. Between music and voices, between the rise and fall of fountains, there is only the glow upon the water and the soft breath of the breeze. It is in these silences that the fair seems most alive, not in the noise of its inventions, but in the stillness of its light. The eyes wander upward again, to the domes and colonnades outlined against the dark sky. Their symmetry, their vastness, their improbable whiteness. By day they inspire admiration. By night, under the lamps, they inspire something gentler, something closer to reverie. They are not monuments demanding awe, but companions in a shared dream. Luminous forms that guide the mind not toward thought, but toward drifting. And so the evening deepens, and the lights continue to bloom, steady and unfading. The white city holds itself suspended in radiance, as though determined to keep darkness at bay for as long as it can. The visitors linger, walking slowly, watching, breathing. They will return to their homes, their towns and cities, lit only by gas and flame. And they will remember this, a night when light itself was the marvel, when progress glowed not with noise or speed, but with stillness, reflection, and quiet bloom. The lights of the fair still hold their steady brilliance, but already the hour has grown late enough that the pathways thin. Where earlier there had been clusters of visitors pausing at fountains or drifting along balustrades, now the spaces between them widen, footsteps scattering across gravel in slower rhythms. The air carries the cool weight of night, heavy with the mingled scents of water, plaster, and faint traces of smoke carried from the city beyond the grounds. The lagoon lies calm, its surface darker now, though the reflections of the lamps still glimmer across it like scattered stars. Boats that had once ferried passengers across the water are drawn back toward their moorings, their oars wrapped and set aside, their hulls creaking softly as they shift against the docks. The gondoliers, who earlier had called out gently to draw riders, now move with the unhurried gestures of men ready to rest, their voices low, their movements deliberate. One last band plays at a pavilion nearby. The music softened until it feels more like an echo than a performance. Notes rise and fall, carried on the breeze, dissolving into the quiet of the water's edge. A small circle of listeners remains, seated or standing close together, but their applause is subdued, more a murmur of gratitude than a burst of sound. The music fades, as if it had been part of the air all along, now returning to where it came from. The white city itself still shines, every lamp steady, every dome traced in light, but its brilliance no longer feels like the beginning of something. It feels instead like a farewell, a lingering glow offered to those making their way toward the gates. The buildings stand as serene as they did at dawn, yet now they carry the weight of the day's passage. The countless footsteps that crossed their thresholds, the voices that filled their halls, the gazes that lifted toward their heights. They do not diminish in majesty, but they seem gentler now, as if aware of their visitors' tiredness and willing to ease them on their way. The court of honor, once crowded to the point of stillness, has grown spacious. A few families remain at the railing, pointing softly to the fountains, the children's eyes still wide, though their bodies lean with drowsiness. Couples walk arm in arm, pausing only briefly before continuing onward, the day's wonder having settled into quiet contentment. Along the paths leading outward, small groups gather at intervals to exchange final words, then move on, their conversations absorbed by the open night. Everywhere, there is a sense of gentle unwinding. The fair does not close with abruptness or command. It seems instead to loosen itself slowly, like a fabric unraveling thread by thread. Exhibitors close shutters on their stalls, not with hurried movements, but with care, placing items away, straightening chairs, adjusting displays that will wait until morning. Workers sweep the pathways in long, unhurried strokes, their brooms whispering across stone and gravel. The sound is faint, steady, a rhythm that joins the night rather than interrupts it. The lamps overhead cast long shadows that stretch toward the gates, guiding the way. They make each step along the path feel part of a procession, not formal, not rehearsed, but shared. The visitors do not march, they drift, yet all in the same direction, their scattered lines gradually converging. The midway, too, grows quieter. Where music and voices had once competed, now only the occasional call rises, brief and fading. The Ferris wheel turns more slowly, its outline traced with dots of light, carrying its final riders upward into a sigh grown deeper. Their silhouettes, faintly visible against the lamps, seem smaller than before, less exultant, more contemplative. Each turn of the wheel feels like the closing of a circle, marking the day's passage toward completion. Beyond the midway, the Pavilion of Nations closes its doors, the banners still fluttering in the cool air, though the stalls stand empty. Their fabrics glow faintly in the lamplight, their colours softened but not lost. The breeze moves through them like a sigh, gentle and rhythmic, carrying hints of spices, perfumes, and unfamiliar woods, scents that will linger in the minds of visitors long after the fair has ended. At the gates, the crowd gathers again, though without the urgency of the morning. Then, there had been anticipation, a forward press of bodies eager for admittance. Now there is only movement outward, steady and unforced, as though no one wishes to leave too quickly. The lamps here shine especially bright, marking the great arches with clarity, their lines glowing against the night sky. Passing beneath them feels less like departure than like the conclusion of a ritual, one final gesture before returning to the world outside. Beyond the gates, the streets of Chicago await. Their lights are fewer, dimmer, mostly gas lamps or the occasional window glow. The difference is immediate, yet it is not jarring. The memory of the fair's brilliance lingers, as though each visitor carries a portion of its glow within them. The clatter of horse-drawn carriages, the shuffle of feet on cobblestone, the distant sound of trains, all these belong to the familiar world, yet tonight they seem softened by the contrast. Some linger just beyond the gates, reluctant to step further. They glance back often, eyes tracing the lines of light still visible within, domes and towers shimmering against the horizon. For them, the White City is not simply left behind. It follows, imprinted upon sight, upon thought, carried forward in silence. Others move more quickly, gathering children, hailing carriages, adjusting coats against the cool air. Even in their haste, though, there is no harshness, only the quiet efficiency of those who know the day is done. The fair continues to glow behind them, but the sound of it recedes. Soon, only the faintest hum remains, distant music, muffled voices, the steady shine across the water now too far to reflect. The city resumes its own rhythm, heavier, darker, yet alive with its own pulse. The visitors step into it with the memory of what they have seen, their tired bodies carrying a quiet wonder. Night settles fully. The fairgrounds, though still lit, belong now to themselves. The vast halls and lagoons emptying, the lights continuing their steady burn as though keeping watch until dawn. The White City does not sleep in darkness. It rests in radiance, waiting for another day, another tide of footsteps, another chorus of voices. The visitor, stepping into the streets, does not feel an ending, but a continuation. The brilliance lingers behind the eyes, soft as an after-image, a glow that cannot be extinguished by distance. Each lamp along the street, each window light, seems a fragment of that larger radiance, a reminder that the White City is not gone, but carried onward. The night enfolds it, not to erase, but to preserve it in stillness. And so the day closes, not with noise, not with spectacle, but with the slow, steady drift of people into the quiet streets, their hearts carrying what words cannot hold. The White City glows behind them, eternal in memory, timeless in light, until at last, even the sound of footsteps dissolves into the night. And so, our quiet journey comes to a close. Tonight we step back into a morning long ago, when travellers boarded a restless train and set out towards something that felt larger than themselves. We followed them through misty fields and small towns, past chimneys and bridges, until the great city of Chicago began to rise in fragments on the horizon. We lingered in the carriage, listening to the soft clatter of wheels, the low hum of a tune, the rustle of newspapers filled with promises of wonders yet unseen. We watched as anticipation grew, each mile carrying passengers closer, not just to a place, but to an idea, that the world could be remade in white stone and electric light. And when the train finally slowed, the city welcomed them with noise and movement, a whirl of steam and voices, of porters and newsboys and travellers spilling into the station. Yet beyond the smoke, they knew something extraordinary awaited, a vision of beauty and progress that the world would remember. That was the path we walked together tonight, from the hush of morning mist to the restless arrival in the heart of a growing city. It was not a story of war or kings, but of ordinary travellers chasing a glimpse of the future. Now, as you drift toward rest, I'd love to hear from you. Tell me in the comments, what part of tonight's journey stayed with you most? Was it the quiet anticipation of the station, the hypnotic rhythm of the rails, or that final moment of stepping into Chicago itself? Your thoughts are like lanterns across the night, small lights connecting us, each one adding to this gentle community. And if you haven't already, take a moment to subscribe. That way we can keep traveling together, softly, slowly, into the forgotten corners of history, letting the past carry us gently into sleep. Good night, and I'll see you in the next story.